family isn't just money, it's a plan. So let's talk about something that most people have heard about, but few people truly understand, which is pre planning or pre needs, as we call it in the industry. So, what is a pre need or what does a pre need mean? So, pre need planning simply means making decisions before your family needs to make them. Think about it this way, right? So, we make plans all the time for vacations, we make plans for uh, retirement, we make plans for everything, weddings, to buy a car, to buy car insurance, and then hoping we never need it, right? So, yet many families don't have the conversation of putting your last wishes together before a crisis occurs. So, what is a pre need? Pre needs include stuff like funeral wishes, burials, if the person wants to be buried, the person wants to be cremated, that preference. If the person have life insurance, if they had a living trust, any wills, any medical directives, any organization about important documents, all these things are the goal to focus before our deaths, right? But like it is, it's a very uncertain thing. Like sometimes we don't even, think about it because for us, if especially when people are young, you don't expect your life to end. So that was kind of like one of the things that happened in our family. Like I said, we lost someone very close to us, and she was very young, at 24, and it kind of had like an eye opener for a lot of us in the industry, and obviously a lot of us that are just their family members, her family members, right? So why do families avoid discussing about death? You know, many people don't want to talk about death because it makes them uncomfortable. And yes, of course, it should make you uncomfortable. Everyone will end up dying, especially in the Hispanic community. I feel like it's more of like a taboo. Like they think that if you talk about it, you're naming it, you're calling it, you're basically bringing it to your into existence. So they usually say, "Don't talk about it. You're just going to jinx it. God will take care of everything." Yes, God does take care of everything, but you also have to take care of certain things on your end. It's kind of like the same thing that when people want to win the lottery, but they never buy a ticket for the lottery. It's the exact same thing. So I feel that some of the things that they avoided, why, is because it creates confusion later, right? The reality is that love isn't just saying I love you. Love is making sure your family isn't left with a mess. Not saying that what happened was a mess, but it is very important to actually realize or to actually know what are those people's wishes. Luckily for she was my cousin. She actually had a conversation. They had that conversation amongst the sisters on what is it that they wanted, right? And unfortunate, we had to put that in place at a very short term after that conversation that they had. So, what are some things that include all this? Some emotional consequences of not planning. Well, as you guys know, when someone passes away, family members are already overwhelmed with emotions. They're grieving, they're exhausted, they're hurting. That's the biggest thing. They're hurting. So now imagine having to answer certain questions, kind of like what kind of service did they want? Did they want to be buried? Did they want to be cremated? Which cemetery would they want it to go? What song would you want us to play? Who is paying for everything, which is the most important one? Because yes, a lot of people don't believe about pre-needs. A lot of people don't believe about life insurance until they need it. Until somebody tells them or asks them, how would you pay this? Who will pay it? Family members most of the time end up arguing because nobody knows what the deceased actually wanted. a difficult time becomes even more difficult. This whole thing is just to essentially leave everything exactly how you want it. Don't leave it for discussion. Don't have, your family go into arguments and things like that. So, what are some other consequences as well of not planning? According to the recent industry estimates, funeral expenses alone can easily reach from 14,000 to approximately 34,000, depending on the location and depending obviously on the services. So one of the biggest things is before what you would like to talk about basically is that other financial consequences of not planning is who will continue paying the mortgages if they had a mortgage. If they went into debt, is it going to be erased? Who's going to stay with that debt? Any medical bills, any utilities, any loss of income. The loss of income is actually very important because sometimes there's only one person who's like the breadwinner. So what happens if they don't have something in place to continue basically providing that income for that family? What happens now? Right? So many families are focused to use credit cards or to borrow money when it comes to buying all these last or funeral arrangements. Some families go to resources like GoFundMe's, accounts that obviously, yes, they're very simple to prepare, but it's not a financial plan. I see this all the time, especially in the Hispanic community, that we like to, kind of like I said at the beginning, like to plan everything, from like quinceañeras, from the first birthday of the baby, the first baby, everything. But they do not plan, or they have nothing. No, they have no plan at all when it comes to an actual, funeral arrangement, a pre-need, or even like what it is when it comes to like life insurance. And it's also considered also like kind of like an emergency, right? Because if you think about it, and actually we've seen it, they go with GoFundMe's. How many times you've passed through the freeway or passed through, a very busy street and you see people with like, GoFundMe's, you see people that are doing car washes, people that are doing fundraisers, people that are doing everything that it is to pay somebody's either funeral, hospitalization, anything like that, an emergency. We don't take it serious when it comes to our death. We think that death is going to be taken forever, or it's going to happen only when we're old. And even the people that are old, sometimes they just think they're like, hey, let God do his thing. Well, yeah, he will eventually. But there's things that we still have to take into consideration, make sure that we know what we need to do in order to make that transition a lot smoother. Not just for us, but for the people that we leave behind, right? So let's talk about numbers, because many people are shocked when they find out how expensive funerals really are. Again, it really depends on the city, depends on the state, depends on everything. Each choice or each option can lead to, potentially being like twice or three times the price that it could be something so simple. So I'm gonna give you guys like on average what we right now we've seen. So we have funeral home services range here, at least in the state of California, approximately $2,000 to $4,000. Caskets, they run about $2,000 to $10,000 plus dollars. Burial plots, that's literally the location where you're gonna be resting. It's $1,500 to $10,000 plus dollars. Headstones, same thing, $1,000 to over $5,000. Opening and closing graves, $1,000 to $3,000 plus. Flowers, $300 to $1,500 approximately. Reception, $500 to $5,000 plus. So many families spend approximately $14,000 to roughly $36,000 when it comes to everything. Again, if you do not have a plan, a pre-need in place, majority of families don't have that much money laying there, don't have the $15,000 there. So what happens now? Again, they go back to the actual, either taking loans, and this is where they just keep on stacking more debt and more frustration. Again, they don't grieve properly. They don't feel like, like they're going through it. Sometimes that's why you see families that, end up fighting amongst each other, because they're trying to decide there right there and then what's going to happen to their loved ones, and then they don't get to the point where they're actually, going through that moment until years later, maybe, months, days, weeks. But at that time, it's like they didn't get to grieve properly. So some of the options that pre-needs come with, it's either where you want to be buried or cremation. Some families choose to be buried, or some people choose to be buried, and then others choose cremation. Neither of it is right or wrong, but it's just important to communicate what is your desire, your wishes beforehand. Cremation is often one of the most inexpensive one, or less expensive. Burial typically costs more because of the cemetery fees. You get the casket, the headstone, all that other good stuff. The biggest issue isn't which option someone chooses. The issue is when nobody knows what that person wanted. That's where it gets troubling for the families. Like I was saying, usually families don't have $15,000 sitting around in savings, and if they do, it could be sometimes hard for banks to give them all that money that they need right there and then. So then what happens? They tend to utilize credit cards, personal loans, borrowing from other families, from their own families, fundraisers, and all this happens while they're supposed to be grieving. The emotional pain becomes financial pain. And I'm sorry, like it's really hard because sometimes we got to ask ourselves, if something happens to us tomorrow, would our family know exactly what our wishes? You know, would they know where your important documents are? That's one of the biggest things too. Would they be able to even get access to your important documents? There's people that hold them in safes, and they'll probably be the only ones that know about that code. You know, would they know if you had any life insurance policies? So in our case, our family member did have some life insurance policies. The biggest, I guess, delay, or the biggest hurdle when it comes to life insurance as well, is that it takes time. It's a whole process as well. The biggest difference, obviously, between the pre-need and the life insurance is, yes, both are planning, right? But one of them complements the other. So the pre-need is basically just whenever you have all the arrangements set up, and then people know exactly where they're going to be taking your body, what they're going to be doing with it, and then where you're going to be resting forever, right? Now, when it comes to the life insurance part, yes, it's important as well to know exactly what it is, because again, like I was mentioning before, if you're the last person, or you're the person that is providing income to this family, and something were to happen to you, yeah, they might have something in savings, but for how long is that going to take? Is going to help them out? If they have rent, if they have a mortgage, who's going to pay for that? For how long? I've seen people that they're like, yeah, I have $300,000 in the bank. Okay, so how much do you owe? Because if something happens to you right now, the credit cards are still going to ask for their money. If you have any cars, they can repo those vehicles, yes. But what happens to your mortgage? For how long are they going to be able to pay it? And if they pay your mortgage, what else do they have? Any other expenses that come with it. So it's a whole process, things that you guys should be able to understand, and then make plans accordingly. So things that surprised me, right? Well, for this situation was, I guess, the biggest thing was that she was very young. Nobody was expecting it. She was, like I said, she was 24 years old. Uh, it was a vehicle accident, and she was taken away. Right? She lost her life. She was a very beautiful person, amazing soul. So it's like that was one of the surprises for me. Right? I feel like, not saying that I don't expect it from, like, older folks, but it's like I feel like if when it comes to somebody being older, well, you kind of expect it already. There's like, oh, you get the message, you get the call, and it's like, okay, they were older, so you kind of take it less, not too hard, but like, it affects you less because you're like, okay, they were older, or they were in a situation where you're like, you know we knew about it. Another challenge that kind of like rose on this situation was that they live in a different state. They live in the state of Georgia, so the time difference and all these things too. That kind of didn't help. Um, we received the call very early in the morning, and I know as well that they were hurting badly because the situation just happened whenever we got the call, less than minutes. So it is important, to actually be careful as well how you present certain information to people, because like, I guess for us, my family has really bad, um, how can I say it, really bad ways of showing, that they care, or to deliver certain messages. When it comes to deaths, I feel like we are not that good at it, and I feel like nobody is good at obviously giving messages like that. But it really depends, who tells you and how they tell you certain situations. So that was kind of like something that did get me very, very shaken. What would have been made it easier? I guess nothing. In this situation in particular, I don't feel like anything would have made it easier for us to digest what we received. But we were there for them, and we still are, because we are technically still. I'm For the people that don't know, I'm also a life insurance broker. So I did try to help the family, our family, and I am still helping them, but it's different when you're helping other families to secure their family, like, they have like the either pre needs or have like their life insurance policies, and then until it actually hits your family or hits something or someone close to you, it's when one, you get that experience that you don't want to have. You probably wanted to have it with somebody else, but it helps you understand a little bit more the process of what people are actually going through when it happens, and to have that, kind of like that different mindset that yes, people are hurting, but things still need to get done. Especially because, like I said, funerals and, like, burials and all that stuff, they're not cheap. And I guess my part in this whole situation was, to help them out. Not saying that I was not grieving, but the people that were immediate to her husband, her sisters, mom, dad. Well, we kind of want to give them. We gave them space, that way they can take it how they were supposed to. Um, and that was kind of like my thing. I wanted to help them out in that particular way. But in her case, I guess, they were recently married, but it's hard. I don't think it becomes easier at all. But it was something hard for our family. I know that for sure. Um, like I said, I was giving you guys some of the stuff that our family went through. I want to say that it was more than $30,000 for at least all her funeral arrangements and stuff like that. So again, if they didn't have anything saved up, and even if they did, it's still kind of like a big number to or big amount of money to actually come out of their like pocket, like out of nowhere, right? And this is also some of the biggest things too that we do see, that Not saying that this is what every company does, but if you don't know exactly what that person wanted, or even like if you don't have that those type of conversations, they tend to oversell you things. It's like, she would have probably wanted this. I did this. Maybe not this casket. Maybe grab the most expensive one. So they, not saying that they utilize your grief or your pain for them to like sell you more stuff, but they kind of do. And it's like, they know that you want to get stuff done quick, and they know that you want to get things out of the way already, and then you want to start grieving appropriately. But it's something that you can avoid by having something already preset. I did have the conversation with my with her siblings, and a lot of people have like this misconception of like, I'm too young for this, right? Whether that be for like life insurance, or whether that be for like a pre-need. you know there is an advantage of having something already set up prior to, whether that be for a pre-need or whether that be for like life insurance. uh, Life insurance is usually or less expensive when you are young and healthy. This is the reality of it. Regardless of how people think about it, they're like, okay, they just want to take my money. No, the earlier that you get it, the less money you're going to be paying, and then you can get it, at better rates because you are healthier. It gets more difficult, at least for insurance brokers like us, when somebody, you're trying to help them out, and then God forbid something happens to them, whether that be like a chronic illness or critical illness, and then they try to come back to you, and at that point their rates are higher because yes, they are young, but if they have a certain type of conditions, now the carriers basically, it's more of a risk for them, so they you know tend to elevate those premiums for them. So a lot of things as well, a lot of good things and bad things that I saw on this situation too. So a lot of people do say, my job covers me. So most employers plan only provide 1 or 2 times your annual salary. For many families, that isn't enough. Um, my cousin, she actually, she was smart. She was smart, and she had one from her work, uh, and then she translated, or basically made it into her own personal one too. The advantage of the one that she had was that it was a permanent policy. So there's two different types of policies that go along with these things, and that's basically term, which is the ones that kind of what it says. It's good for a certain amount of time. That doesn't mean that the policy expires. It just means that the premium, or the amount that you were paying, gets locked in for that amount of time. After that, they have to do a reevaluation, and then they'll charge you accordingly to your age and your health. And then the other one is a permanent policy. Permanent policies tend to have this thing called cash accumulation, or they can get cash accumulation. The good thing about her policy that she had was that, thank God, that yes, she canceled it the beginning of this year, but because it was a permanent policy, it had some money accumulated in there. And then thanks to that money that was being accumulated, the premium was being paid out of that cash accumulation. So the policy was still not lapsed. And then when you hear lapse, it means basically that it closed, or it got, there was no more money in there, and then the account or the policy closed. So there was enough funds there to continue having that policy alive, and thanks to that, she or her family, it actually has a little bit more. Correct. Let me back it up a little bit. She didn't cancel the policy; she just stopped paying it. because she just said, you know what, I don't need it anymore, and she just stopped paying it. Again, because she did have some cash accumulation in there, the policy continued to still be basically enforced or active, you could say. A lot of things again that we tend to have as a myth is that you know what, I'll just buy it later. I'm healthy right now. Nothing's gonna happen to me. Again, we have the tomorrow is not a guarantee. So the healthiest day you'll ever be is today. So wanting often means paying more later or becoming insurable. That is one of the biggest things that we deal as insurance broker is that if we want to tell the people something that they should be engraved in their heads is that if you have health and if you are young, the time is now. It's not like, I know that people say, yeah, I'll get it later on, but then later on, again, it's not guaranteed. Our lives are not guaranteed, but at least we can have them insured, and that could help at least our families. So, what are some of the things? What are some of the steps that needs to happen when somebody passes away? Right. One of the biggest things that people were asking were that. So what do I do now? One of my loved ones passed away. What are the actual steps that you need to do in order for you to either, like I said, even if they had life insurance or not, what are certain steps? So order multiple certificates, obtaining death certificates. That's going to be one of the biggest things. And again, it's hard because at this point you're still grieving, you're still going through the motions, but you have to obtain death certificates. And majority of institutions, whether that be for banks, insurance companies, or government agencies, you probably need to get a bunch of copies of this to be able to give it to these agencies. Some of them require, they're okay with copies, and some of them require at least to have the original one. The other thing too is basically location of important documents. So depending also, let me go back again to step one. One of the other certificates that you might need, depending on how the death occurred, might be a police report. If it was something like an accidental death, you probably will need a police report. In her case, it was so they were waiting on the report in order for us to be able to submit a death claim. But that's one of the biggest things too that you guys need to be aware of. Going now to step two, be able to locate important documents. So have that conversation with your family. Every family should have an emergency folder. At least I know that in my family, I know where our things are at. Because my wife, she's the one that has that location like dead on. Like she knows exactly where it's at, and obviously I know it as well. But this is something that at least for our family, we need to start telling other people that are very close to us where that information is. Yes, because we know where that is, but if something were to happen to both of us, it's going to be a pain in the butt. So the next step is contact insurance companies, whether that be to gather the policy numbers, call the carriers, request the claim forms. Each carrier has its own thing. So I know that for her, one of them was Transamerica. So their process is a little bit kind of like it's a little bit easier. They ask you certain things that that the person or the family knows, and then there's certain companies, kind of like the one that she had through her spouse's work. They're a little bit more complicated because that one you do have to present all the certificates, have to present everything in order for them to even initiate a claim. So submitting all those documents to the carriers is a big thing. Another step is notify Social Security. So depending on the circumstances, they may be survivor benefits available for the spouse, children, or and something. Sometimes it may be overlooked or not even know that they have already benefits. So that's good. That could be a good one too. Um, when it comes to the notify Social Security if they are receiving any benefits as well. Uh, the next step will be to contact financial institutions. Normally, banks, lenders, investments, and pension providers are institutions that have like their own process, but essentially, what they normally ask for is same thing, death certificate, and then if hopefully they had already something in place where they designated somebody else as their beneficiary of those accounts. If they didn't, hopefully they had either a trust, a living trust, or a will or something. That way they can at least, help them out to be able to distribute those funds if needed. Um, the next step is review beneficiaries. So again, this is kind of like hand to hand with the other institutions, whether that be a life insurance policy, a life insurance carrier, whether that be a bank, whether that be a from work as well. Like I said, if they had pensions or stuff like that, know who were their beneficiaries. And one of the biggest things too that you guys need to understand is that as soon as something happens in your life, if you already do have, whether that be a 401k, whether that be people that are in the military that have like your TSP, whether that be people that, even like bank accounts, if something happens in your life that needs to be updated, please update it. And what I mean by that is update your beneficiary list, update the people that you care about, update because I'm gonna give you an example, and this is not from here. When I was in the military, when I was in my last position as in the active duty, um, I got to experience, uh, in a sense, I was the one that was notifying the family of this service member that he passed away. They were married for not that long, but this person did not update their, well, one, their legal status or their marital status when it came to like the TSP, which is the 401k, and that's also attached to the life insurance policy as well, which is the SGLI for military members. They didn't update this information. What ended up happening was that, yes, when he passed away, the beneficiary was the mother, which was his mother, um, and because she was trying to not fight it, but it was her, I guess, her right because she was the spouse and she was the one that was getting all the expenses and everything that involved this death. She had to prove basically that they were legally married, and then she had to present the actual well, the death certificate one. She had to present the certificate of marriage, even like pictures and stuff like that. So again, it is very important. I've seen as well where people have prior marriages and they leave their prior spouse as beneficiary and they have never updated it. Stuff like that also can be in like their bank accounts and things that you guys can, just even start to imagine. If you do not have somebody that can help you with, reach out. Reach out to us. You guys can send us a DM with the word planning, or you can send us a text to 714-360-3025. We can help you guys create this plan and help you also update some of these things. We can give you the information. We can guide you that you guys don't have to go, or better yet, your family doesn't have to go through like struggles after you passed away. um I guess one of the things that I do want to say too is like, don't rush into any major financial decisions during your grieving process. What this means too is that, like, if you want to sell the house, like if you guys already had a house, sell the house because X, Y, and Z. Sometimes it's better to at least wait some time and actually think everything through, because sometimes when we're grieving we don't actually are thinking straight, and it literally can affect you guys in your lives later on. Some of the stuff that I really want to encourage you guys is to sit down with your spouse, sit down with your parents, your children, and talk about a plan. Because again, tomorrow is not a guaranteed, and yes, it's a hard conversation to have, but it's a necessary conversation to have. Talk to your family. Let them know what is it that you want to happen whenever your time comes. Because it's important, because it will save so much stress. Obviously, they're gonna be stressed if they loved you, but that shouldn't be an additional thing that you're gonna leave them behind. You're gonna leave them peace of mind. Um, and this is also considered kind of like a part of a legacy plan. So legacy isn't just money. uh, Most people hear the word legacy and they think about money, but legacy is much bigger than that. Legacy is preparation. Legacy is also organization. Legacy is making life easier for your family. Legacy is reducing stress for your family, for your loved ones, for your spouse, for your kids. Legacy is protecting all of them. Legacy is leaving instructions instead of confusion. I feel that the older the people that are like are the generations that are a little bit older, sometimes they don't like to have this conversation at all. Um, and I don't know if it's like because they're scared, or they don't feel comfortable with it. But again, it is something so crucial to have, because I would love to know. I did not know. Like for me, whenever this happened, I did have this conversation with my mom, with my family, um, and I didn't know that she did not want, like, at all. She's like, nope, I do not want to get a buried. I mean, cremated. So I didn't know that. There's people that literally say, just toss me in the hole and I'm good. But that's not essentially a plan. Um, have something in place. Talk to a person that knows. We have plenty of agents that know what they're doing. Contact us. We can help you guys take all those steps right now that you guys can, and you guys are not, you know, in a position where you need to do it, quickly, or your family needs to do it quickly. Take that time. It is also kind of like a, well, not a love language, but it's sharing love with your family, because again, you're sharing exactly what is it that you need to know, or they need to know, um, to to um, to plan. You know, Again, I encourage you guys to talk to your loved ones, let them know what is it that you guys want. Um, Important things too, to take into consideration with this conversation that you guys will have is, again, where are the important documents? If something were to happen to me tomorrow, are you guys gonna be well taken care of? And if the answer is no, talk to a specialist, talk to somebody that can guide you, and then, create a form, create a path, create a legacy, a plan for your family. Some people don't even know, like, do we have a trust in our family? Have that conversation. If you guys do, let them know where they can access it. you know um, So what happens if something would have happened to us? You know, what is it that you guys need to do? Create a checklist for your family. There's some people that are very well organized, and there's people that, you know, they just like chaos. For those people, I feel like leaving them something behind is be way better, because they tend to lose it when something like that, situation like that happen, and they tend to spend or overspend more on, you know, things that are unnecessary. So again, this is not an easy conversation to have, but is a necessary conversation to have. I'm I'm sorry. I'm thankful that I got to meet that I got to spend some time with my cousin when she was when we were younger, and I'm glad that she had the conversation that she did with her loved ones. Who would have known that we were gonna put them in play, you know, soon? But I really, you know, want to still give my condolences to her husband, her sisters, all of my family. I know they're still grieving. I know they're still painful, because again, it was a very young person. Um, and I want to said I want to encourage all of you guys to you know, talk to your loved ones, you know, take care of them, and make sure that you guys have a plan. I really want to say that everyone deserves a plan, and everyone needs one. My name is Jose Citen Covarrubias. Thank you guys for joining us, Talkaholics. And remember, we're here to educate, empower, and protect. Till next time.